The orphaned alien child. The stars over a ruined battlefield glowed cold as smoke and fire drifted across the surface of a dying world. In the middle of the wreckage, a small child sat alone, her eyes wide and filled with fear, as the sounds of war faded into silence. Her kind had fought for survival against an enemy that showed no mercy, and in the end her parents and clan had been destroyed, leaving only her with no food, no shelter, and no hope. Ships left the planet behind carrying soldiers and scavengers, but none stopped for her. She was abandoned, forgotten, and left to die among the ruins. But fate is strange, and destiny often takes shape in ways no one can predict. A human exploration vessel landed on the edge of the battlefield, searching for survivors and signs of technology to study. The team moved carefully through the smoking ruins, scanning for energy signatures, when they heard the faint sound of a child crying. At first they thought it was only an echo, but then they found her small body covered in dirt, her skin a strange color unlike any human, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She looked weak, too weak to resist, when one of the explorers bent down and lifted her gently into his arms. She should have been left behind according to the rules of galactic salvage, but the humans did not follow such cold laws. The explorers brought her back to their ship, and when she opened her eyes, she did not see monsters or enemies. She saw faces that looked at her with kindness. The captain argued with his crew about what to do, but in the end he decided to bring her to Earth. It was not an easy choice, for he knew that alien governments would be furious if they learned a survivor had been taken, but the humans had always been stubborn. They valued compassion over permission. On Earth, the girl was given to a family who could not have children of their own. They lived in a small town surrounded by forests and rivers, where the sky at night was filled with stars. The family named her Arya. At first, Arya did not understand the language or customs of her new home, but the humans were patient. They taught her to walk again, to eat human food, to laugh when she wanted to cry. Slowly she began to trust them, and for the first time since her world had burned, she felt safe. Arya grew fast. She was different from the children around her, and everyone knew it. But her parents never allowed anyone to treat her as less. When neighbors asked questions, her mother would smile and say she was special. When children whispered behind her back, her father would place a gentle hand on her shoulder and remind her that family is stronger than gossip. Arya began to see the strange power of humans, not in their weapons or their strength, but in their ability to care for someone who was not their own. Her earliest memories of Earth were filled with warmth. She remembered nights by the fire when her father told stories about explorers who crossed oceans and reached the stars. She remembered mornings when her mother sang while cooking and the smell of bread filled the house. She remembered walking in the woods with other children who taught her how to climb trees and swim in the river. She also remembered the fear that lived deep inside her when she thought of the war that had taken her real family, but her human parents always comforted her. Still, Arya was not like the others. Her skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Her eyes could see farther than any human. When she ran through the fields, she was faster than the boys who challenged her, and when she grew angry, her voice carried a strange force that made even adults pause. These differences frightened some, but her parents told her never to hide who she was. They said being different was not a curse but a gift, and Arya carried those words in her heart. Years passed and the memory of the battlefield faded, though never completely. Arya learned human ways, but she never forgot that she was not truly one of them. At night, she would sit by her window and look at the stars, wondering if there were others like her still alive somewhere far away. She asked her parents once why they had taken her in when they had no reason to, and her mother replied, "Because you needed us, and we needed you." That answer stayed with her and gave her strength. What Arya did not know was that whispers had already begun to spread beyond Earth. Traders, mercenaries, and bounty hunters who traveled between worlds had heard rumors of an alien child raised by humans. Some laughed at the idea, but others remembered that humans had a reputation for surviving impossible odds, and they wondered what such a child might become. For now, Arya was only a girl growing up in a quiet town, but destiny had already placed her on a path that would shake the galaxy. Growing among humans, Arya's days on Earth were shaped by both joy and struggle as she grew older and learned more about the world around her. Her human parents gave her love and protection, but they could not shield her from every challenge. In school, she was always different, no matter how much she tried to blend in. Her skin carried a faint glow that deepened when she was excited, and her eyes caught details that other children missed. When the class played sports, she ran farther and faster than anyone else. and when they studied, she memorized entire lessons in a single reading. These differences made her stand out, and children are quick to notice what is not the same as their own. Some children admired her and wanted to be near her as if some instinct told them she was destined for something greater, but others feared her. There were whispers in hallways about her being unnatural, about her not being from this world. At times, bullies tried to humiliate her to remind her she did not belong. They pulled at her clothes, threw her books on the ground, and laughed when she tried to walk away. But Arya never fought back at first. Her parents had taught her to be patient, to hold her anger, and to prove her worth not with violence but with character. She endured more than many would have, but even patience has limits. One day when a boy pushed her too far, she reacted without thinking. Her eyes burned bright and her voice carried a force that knocked him to the floor, though she had not touched him. The classroom froze, and for a long moment no one dared to breathe. Fear spread quickly, and stories ran through the school about Arya, the strange girl who could break people with only a look. That night she cried and begged her parents to tell her why she was cursed. But her father only held her close and reminded her that strength without compassion is weakness, and that she must learn to control her gift. Her parents became her guides in balancing her human lessons with the instincts of her alien blood. Her mother taught her to listen to music when she felt rage rising, and her father took her into the forest, teaching her how to focus her senses on the sounds of rivers and winds. Slowly, Arya began to control her powers instead of letting them control her. It was not easy, and there were times she failed, but each failure made her stronger and more determined. The lessons of humanity became her anchor, shaping her into something far more dangerous than she or anyone else could see. Outside the small town, there were others who noticed her as well. Traders who passed through Earth on hidden routes spoke of the alien child who had survived the war. Smugglers carried rumors of a girl raised by humans whose strength was unmatched. At first, these stories were dismissed as fantasies told to frighten listeners. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, mercenary captains and warlords began to listen carefully. They wondered if such a child existed, what might she grow into when she became an adult. Arya herself remained unaware of these whispers. To her, the world was still her home, where she explored the rivers and fields with her friends, though she always felt the invisible wall that separated her from them. She cared for them, but she knew that one day she would be forced to choose between the life of a quiet human girl and the destiny her blood demanded. This awareness grew stronger as her teenage years began. Her body changed faster than the others around her, and her abilities grew sharper. She could lift stones that grown men struggled to move and run for miles without losing breath. When she looked into the night sky, she felt a pull, as if the stars were calling her. Her parents noticed as well. They feared the day the galaxy would come looking for her, but they never once tried to hold her back from discovering herself. Instead, they reminded her that no matter how far she went, she would always have a home on Earth. That bond became her shield against doubt. Arya might have been born alien, but the values she carried came from humans. She learned loyalty, sacrifice, and the stubborn refusal to surrender even when the odds were impossible. She did not yet realize it, but these traits would one day make her feared across the stars more than any weapon or ability. For now, she walked the fragile line between two worlds: the quiet life of a daughter in a small town and the awakening of a power that no one on Earth could truly understand. Each day she grew stronger, and each night she dreamed of battles she did not yet fight. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and though she was still only a girl, she was already on her way to becoming something more, something that neither her alien blood nor her human upbringing alone could have created. The hidden power. As Arya entered her teenage years, the quiet town that had sheltered her became too small to contain the strength growing inside her. Each day she felt her body changing in ways that frightened her, yet also filled her with wonder. She could hear whispers from far across the fields, as if carried to her by the wind. She could see in the dark as clearly as others saw in daylight. When she placed her hands on a heavy object, she could lift it with little effort, though grown men strained and sweated to move the same weight. She had always known she was different, but now her differences became undeniable. At first, she tried to hide what was happening. She wore gloves when her hands grew too hot with energy. She stayed indoors when her eyes glowed brightly in the night. She avoided contests with her classmates because she knew she would win too easily, but secrecy is heavy, and eventually she could not keep the truth from her parents. One evening, as the sun fell low, she showed them what she could do. She bent a metal bar until it twisted like soft clay. She leapt from the ground and reached the top of a tree in a single bound. Her parents watched in silence, not with fear, but with the same calm love they had always given her. Her father told her that power itself was not dangerous, but the way it was used would decide her fate. Her mother reminded her that she was not a weapon, but their daughter no matter what the galaxy thought. Encouraged by their words, Arya began to practice in secret. She tested her speed by running through the forest trails until even the deer could not keep ahead of her. She tested her strength by climbing cliffs and moving stones that had not shifted for centuries. She tested her voice by shouting across valleys where the echo carried like a storm. With each passing week she became more confident, though inside her grew the uneasy knowledge that such power would never remain hidden forever. It was during one of these secret trials that she first attracted attention from outside. A trader ship traveling low through the atmosphere caught an energy spike unlike anything on Earth. The pilot followed the signal, and though he never approached close enough to see her, he returned to his network with stories of strange power rising on a backwater planet. Soon whispers spread again, this time with more certainty. They spoke of a girl raised among humans who could move faster than machines and strike harder than soldiers. Some dismissed it as exaggeration, but others listened carefully, for mercenary clans always searched for new weapons and new legends to follow. Arya knew nothing of these spreading rumors. To her, the only threat was the fear of losing control. Once, when she argued with a boy in town, the ground shook beneath her feet, as if the earth itself felt her anger. Once, when she comforted a wounded animal, her touch closed its wound with a glow that faded as quickly as it came. These events frightened her friends and left her more isolated than before, yet they also taught her discipline. She began to keep journals of every power that awakened within her, noting when it came and how she felt. She built her own training deep in the woods where no eyes could watch. She refused to let her gift turn into a curse. Her parents stood by her even as neighbors grew suspicious. They told her that humanity's greatest weapon was not strength or speed, but will. They reminded her that humans had survived against storms, famine, and endless wars, not because they were the strongest species, but because they refused to surrender. Arya carried those words in her mind every time her alien blood surged within her. She told herself that she would not allow instinct alone to guide her path. She would use her human lessons to shape her alien nature into something greater. As months turned into years, her control sharpened, and her reputation without her knowledge began to grow across the stars. Smugglers told stories in shadowed bars of a hybrid child trained by humans. Bounty hunters whispered about a young warrior who would one day rival entire armies. Mercenary captains argued whether such a being could be bought, or whether she would become an enemy none could afford to face. Across the galaxy, her name was not yet known, but her legend had already begun to form. Arya felt only the restless pull of destiny as she looked into the sky each night, believing that one day the stars would call her home. First blood, first mission. Though quiet life that Arya had known could not last forever, because power always draws attention, and those who live by violence are quick to seek it. One night, while the wind carried the smell of rain, a group of strangers came to the small town where she lived. They were not farmers or traders, but armed men whose eyes searched every shadow. They had heard the whispers of a girl raised by humans who carried alien strength, and they had been paid to find her. They watched from the edge of the forest, waiting for a chance to strike. But humans notice danger faster than most think. Her father saw the glint of metal under the trees, and her mother felt the strange silence that comes before violence. They warned Arya and told her to stay hidden, but she refused. She had lived too long fearing what she might be, and now the threat had arrived at her door. When the mercenaries entered the town, they demanded that the people give up the alien girl, but the humans closed their doors and windows, refusing to betray one of their own. Anger turned the mercenaries cruel, and they threatened to burn homes if Arya was not delivered. That was when she stepped into the open, her eyes calm, though inside her heart pounded with fear and fury. She told them that if they wanted her, they would not touch anyone else. Laughter answered her words, for they saw only a young woman, and not the strength coiled within her. When they reached for their weapons, Arya moved faster than sight. She struck one man with her hand, and he flew across the square. She leapt forward and disarmed another before his finger touched the trigger. In moments, the attackers who had expected an easy prize were broken on the ground, but victory did not bring relief. Arya understood then that she had crossed a line that could never be reversed. Blood had been spilled by her hand, and the galaxy would not forget it. Her parents held her afterward, reminding her she had done what was needed to protect their people. But in her heart she felt the heavy weight of first blood. She knew the mercenaries would not be the last. If strangers had found her once, they would return again and again, until either she was captured or she became strong enough to stop them forever. It was then that she made her decision. She would no longer wait for danger to come to her doorstep. She would go out into the galaxy and face it herself. With her parents' blessing, though given with tears, she left the small town carrying only a pack of supplies and the lessons she had learned. She boarded a ship with a trader who had seen her strength and feared her, yet also respected her courage. He brought her to a lawless world on the edge of known space where mercenaries gathered in smoke-filled halls to buy and sell death. Arya entered that place and felt every eye turned to her. They saw her youth and thought her fragile, but their mocking voices soon faded when she offered her first contract. The mission was simple, at least on paper. A caravan of smugglers was being hunted by raiders and needed protection for one journey across the wastelands of a desert planet. Arya took the job, and when the caravan moved, she walked beside the machines carrying cargo through burning sand. The raiders struck with speed and numbers, confident they would overwhelm a small band of guards, but they had not expected her. She fought with both fury and discipline, moving faster than their eyes could follow. She used human tactics, feints, and traps that no alien warrior would have thought to employ. When the last raider fled, the survivors whispered her name in awe. They called her the hybrid killer, though she had taken no pleasure in the battle word spread quickly. In places where mercenaries gathered, they spoke of the girl raised by humans who fought with a mixture of alien strength and human cunning. To some, she was a prize to capture, to others a rival to fear, and to a few a potential leader. Arya did not seek glory or wealth. She fought only to protect those who could not defend themselves, and to ensure that her human family far away on Earth would never again be threatened. Yet each battle added to her legend, and each victory drew the attention of more powerful enemies. The quiet child who once wept among the ruins of her homeworld had taken her first steps into the brutal world of mercenaries, and nothing would ever be the same again, rising fear across the stars. The deserts of that distant world had been only the beginning for Arya. Her first mission gave her a name among mercenaries, and once a name is known, it travels faster than any ship. From smuggler dens to warlord courts, whispers carried the tale of the young woman raised by humans who could fight as if entire squads moved within her body. Some believed the stories were lies created by smugglers who wanted to impress their clients. Others laughed and said no human world could ever raise a warrior capable of standing against seasoned killers. But those who had faced her knew the truth, and their voices spoke with fear. Each retelling of her deeds added new color to her legend, and soon her presence alone could shift the balance of power in a negotiation. Arya moved from one mission to another, not seeking fortune but seeking purpose. She guarded convoys that carried food to starving colonies. She defended small towns on forgotten moons against pirates who sought to enslave them. She fought in brutal arenas where desperate men and women wagered their lives for coin. And though she never sought such contests, her victories drew crowds who hungered to see if the legend was real. She always won, but never with cruelty. Unlike many mercenaries, she did not fight for bloodlust. She fought with the discipline her human parents had taught her, and she spared those who could no longer resist. This strange sense of honor confused her enemies and unsettled her allies, for mercy was rare in the trade of death. Each battle left scars not only on her body but on her spirit. At night, she remembered the quiet forest of her human home and the warmth of her mother's voice. Yet every morning she woke to the hard reality of a galaxy that respected only strength. In that galaxy, her reputation grew until her name reached even the high halls of power. Alien generals who once dismissed humans as fragile and weak now whispered warnings about the girl who fought with human stubbornness and alien might. Warlords debated whether she should be bought to their cause or destroyed before she became unstoppable. Even bounty guilds placed heavy rewards on her capture, though none who tried had ever returned to collect. What unsettled the galaxy most was not only her strength but her methods. Arya did not fight like other mercenaries. She studied her enemies as if reading their hearts. She set traps that turned their numbers against them. She struck fast and disappeared before they could recover. These were not the tactics of her alien bloodline, but the strategies of humans who had survived countless wars on Earth by thinking faster and refusing to yield. To alien eyes, her approach was chaos, but it was chaos that worked. Fleets began to speak her name with caution, for they feared what might happen if she ever commanded more than her own two hands. Her rise also inspired loyalty. Those who fought beside her often chose to stay with her after the mission ended. Some were mercenaries who had grown tired of slaughter without meaning. Some were simple colonists who wished to repay her protection. They followed not because she demanded it, but because her presence gave them hope that even in a galaxy ruled by cruelty, someone still remembered justice. This growing band of followers made her even more dangerous in the eyes of the powerful. A lone warrior could be hunted, but a leader surrounded by loyal fighters could become the spark of rebellion. Rumors spread so far that even on Earth her name returned in fragments through hidden channels. Her parents heard of a mercenary who fought like fire across the stars, and though they guessed the truth, they said nothing. They only prayed that she would survive and that the lessons they had given her would remain her guide. Arya herself never forgot them. In the heat of battle, when blood stained her hands, she would remember her father's voice reminding her that strength must be tempered by compassion. When loneliness clawed at her heart, she would recall her mother's words that family is not only who you are born to, but who chooses to stand by you. These memories steadied her as she became a storm feared across worlds, but with fear came danger, for every victory made her enemies more determined. Secret councils of warlords spoke of alliances to trap her. Guilds of assassins plotted to lure her into ambushes. Even empires that had once ignored mercenary affairs began to take interest in her fate. They feared not only her power but what it represented. If one alien child raised by humans could become so formidable, then what might humanity itself achieve if given the same stage? That thought disturbed leaders who had long dismissed Earth as a primitive world. For the first time, they began to see humans not as background figures in the galaxy, but as a force that could shape its destiny. Arya herself did not seek such recognition. She fought because she refused to let innocence suffer as she once had on the ruins of her homeworld. Yet she felt the weight of every whisper. She saw fear in the eyes of seasoned killers when they faced her. She heard her name carried on the tongues of survivors who spoke of her like a shadow of death. Rising fear followed her wherever she traveled, and though she did not yet understand it, she had already become a symbol of something far greater than herself. Web Titans, the galaxy was changing, and Arya could feel it in the tension that hung like a storm cloud over every system she entered. She had once been a lone shadow striking at injustice, but now her presence demanded attention. Mercenary guilds whispered plans in hushed tones, hoping to find weakness, but she had none they could exploit. Every move she made was calculated, yet seemed instinctive to those who watched her fight. Her enemies began to understand that she was not simply human or mercenary. She was something more, a force that combined the resilience of her human upbringing with the lethal skills she had honed in every corner of the stars. Ships that once ignored her now diverted their courses to avoid a chance encounter, while entire fleets braced for the stories they would hear after a single engagement. No one dared to underestimate her, for the price of misjudgment was always paid in blood. Arya moved from planet to planet, not for wealth but because she could not ignore suffering. The colonies she had saved whispered her name like a blessing, while the criminal syndicates cursed it. She had learned to navigate the politics of the stars as carefully as she navigated battlefields. Every alliance she made was temporary yet effective, and every enemy she faced taught her a lesson that sharpened her mind as much as her reflexes. She had no desire for titles or recognition, but she understood the power of fear and respect. Both were tools she wielded with precision, and she knew that the stronger her legend grew, the more she could protect those who could not protect themselves. Even warlords began to approach her cautiously, offering deals and favors for reasons they barely understood. But the galaxy is a place where peace is temporary and danger lurks in the shadows. The more she saved, the more attention she drew. Secret operatives tracked her movements, noting patterns and weaknesses that did not exist. Alien empires convened emergency councils, whispering of ways to remove a single human from their midst before she inspired others to rise. Assassins were dispatched with weapons and tactics designed to overwhelm her, yet she survived each encounter because she moved like water through a trap, never fighting the same battle twice. Her instincts had become a weapon as deadly as any, gun or blade, and she learned that sometimes the greatest victory was not in striking first, but in making others strike themselves into defeat. In the midst of this rising danger, Arya began to feel the weight of her choices. Every life she saved or enemy she spared was a reminder that she was different from those who simply fought for power. She remembered the quiet nights on the world she called home, and the lessons her parents had instilled in her. They had taught her that strength without compassion was meaningless, and that the measure of a warrior was not in how many foes they could defeat, but in how many lives they could touch without losing themselves. She held on to these truths as she navigated battles and negotiations that would have broken others. The human part of her was the anchor keeping the storm within from consuming her entirely. Her reputation now had unintended consequences. People began to seek her out not just for protection but for guidance. Colonies asked her to train volunteers to defend themselves. Refugees begged her to intervene in conflicts that even powerful governments ignored. Each request tested her limits and stretched her resources, yet she could not ignore them. She realized that she had become more than a mercenary. She had become a symbol of hope and a beacon for those who had none. The responsibility weighed on her shoulders, yet she accepted it because she knew that power without action was a betrayal of the strength she had been given. Enemies adapted as well. Entire fleets coordinated attacks designed to corner her in space, and ground forces attempted to lure her into false alliances. The galaxy had taken notice and was reshaping itself around her movements. Yet Arya did not hesitate. She studied every enemy and situation, learning that fear and intelligence were allies in every confrontation. Each mission became a chessboard where her choices decided not only her survival, but the fate of those who depended on her. She became a master of perception, reading the intentions behind every word and action, until she could anticipate threats before they materialized. Every success reinforced her legend and made her more dangerous, not because she sought it, but because she refused to stand idle, while injustice reigned. Still, in the quiet moments, she wondered about the future. Could one human truly change the galaxy? Or was she simply a storm passing through, leaving destruction and hope in equal measure? She knew the answers were not simple, and yet she continued forward because that was who she had become. Fear and admiration followed her wherever she went, and the galaxy learned that to face Arya was to face a force that could not be tamed and would not be stopped. The final gambit. The galaxy was holding its breath as Arya prepared for the challenge that would define her legend. Word of her victories and daring missions had spread to every corner, and even the most powerful empires feared the shadow of a single human who refused to bow. Yet she did not fear, because fear was a tool she had mastered, and she knew that true power came not from weapons or ships, but from resolve and intellect. Her mercenary life had taught her that every engagement was a story of strategy, and every choice carried consequences beyond her imagination. As she stood on the command deck of her ship looking at the vast expanse of stars, she felt the weight of all those who had come to rely on her, and she understood that this moment was not just a fight but a declaration of humanity itself. The enemy had gathered their might, a coalition of fleets and assassins designed to crush her before she could challenge their dominance. They had prepared traps and ambushes that would have broken even the most seasoned commanders, yet Arya had already anticipated every move. Her mind worked like a network of circuits, calculating variables and possibilities, while her instincts guided her through the chaos. She trusted in her human adaptability, the ability to improvise and innovate in ways no other species could. Every maneuver was precise, every strike calculated, yet it appeared effortless to those who watched and underestimated her. Humanity had taught her courage and resilience, and she wielded those traits like a weapon more lethal than any plasma cannon. As the battle began, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Fleets clashed in a dance of fire and steel while Arya's ship weaved through destruction, leaving enemies stunned and disoriented. She struck with the precision of a master, yet her movements were fluid and unpredictable. Each encounter brought lessons from previous battles, and she adapted faster than anyone could anticipate. Those who had sent assassins now faced ghosts moving faster than they could perceive, while colonies cheered from afar, knowing that a single human had changed the course of entire systems. Arya's legend was no longer just in whispers, it was in the reality of survival and triumph, and in the eyes of those who believed humanity could rise above the impossible. But even legends face moments of reckoning. Arya's opponents unleashed their final gambit. A fleet concentrated on her position, a trap meant to force surrender or death. For a heartbeat, she felt the enormity of it, the sheer scale of power arrayed against her. Yet she remembered the lessons from her parents, the courage of those who had come before, and the lives of every person who had placed hope in her hands. She did not hesitate. She acted with clarity and purpose, using the trap against itself, turning the enemy's strategy into their undoing. One by one, their ships fell not through brute force alone, but through cunning misdirection and human intuition that no machine or alien mind could match. Each victory felt heavier than the last, for it was not just hers but belonged to all of humanity. As the last enemy commander surrendered, Arya allowed herself a moment to breathe. The galaxy was silent, not in fear now but in awe. The coalition, that had thought themselves untouchable, had crumbled before a single human who had been raised by love and hardened by experience. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride, not in conquest, but in proof that humanity could face any challenge without compromise or surrender. Those who had doubted now sought alliances and guidance, knowing that the human who walked among stars was not simply a warrior, but a symbol of what their species could achieve. Aria knew that her journey was far from over, yet she had achieved what many thought impossible. She had rewritten the rules of engagement for the galaxy and established humanity as a force no one could ignore. In the aftermath, she walked among the survivors, offering reassurance and guidance. She saw the hope in the eyes of those who had suffered and knew that her battles were not for glory, but for those who could not defend themselves. Her parents' teachings echoed in her mind, and she understood that her greatest victories were not in fleets destroyed or enemies defeated, but in the preservation of life and the empowerment of others. The galaxy had learned to fear her not for malice, but for the indomitable strength of humanity that she embodied. She had become the ultimate mercenary not because she sought power, but because she refused to let injustice prevail. And as she set her sights on the endless horizon, she smiled, knowing that every challenge would come and go, yet humanity's spirit would endure. The stars themselves seemed to bow in recognition, and every whisper spoke of her name: Aria the human, the mercenary, the legend. She had started as one among billions and had become a force that no empire could contain, a being who had proven that when humanity rises, it rises without limit. The galaxy had changed and nothing would ever be the same again. The human legacy. The galaxy was quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath, waiting to see what a human could truly achieve. Aria's ship floated above a planet that had once trembled under the boots of merciless warlords, but now waited for her to set the new standard of power. She looked at the stars stretching endlessly before her, and felt the weight of every choice she had ever made, and every life that had depended on her. Courage. Each victory had been hard-earned, yet every lesson had brought her closer to understanding that strength was not measured by the destruction one could cause, but by the hope one could inspire. Her enemies had underestimated humans countless times, assuming that only size and weapons mattered. They had not seen the adaptability, the instinctive cunning, and the relentless persistence that defined her kind. Aria had learned that fear could be a weapon, but resolve could be a shield, and she had forged both through fire and hardship. She moved through the command deck with calm confidence, every hand on the crew, understanding without words the importance of this moment. Every action had purpose, every command had consequence, and every heartbeat reminded her that humanity's spirit could not be crushed. The final battle was approaching, and it was unlike any she had faced before. The coalition of tyrants had gathered what remained of their forces, hoping that sheer numbers would finally break her, but she had already anticipated their strategies. They could not calculate the human mind when it refused to be predictable. They could not understand how love and loyalty could be weapons sharper than any blade. Her eyes scanned the fleet-plotting paths of attack that twisted and turned like a river breaking through stone. She relied on instinct and experience, improvising in ways that no machine could simulate. Her crew trusted her implicitly, knowing that every decision was made with precision and care. As the engagement began, the sky erupted in flashes of light and energy. Every ship moved as if part of a single organism, with Aria at the center guiding the flow of battle. She struck where the enemy was weakest and disappeared where they expected her to appear. She turned their traps against them, and each calculated strike dismantled their confidence. The galaxy watched in disbelief as a single human commanded the tide of war, bending it to her. Will she fought not for glory or conquest, but to prove that humanity could survive and rise above any oppression that dared to challenge it. The enemy flagship finally fell silent, and surrender waves echoed across the fleet. Aria's ship glided past the remnants of the conflict, leaving a trail of awe and inspiration. She could feel the energy of those who had survived her victories, their gratitude, their hope flowing through the corridors of her vessel. Humanity had become more than just a species. It had become a statement that no tyranny, no alliance, no weapon could ever extinguish the spark of determination and ingenuity. She had become the embodiment of that truth, a living testament to the potential of a human raised with love and hardened by experience. As she descended to the planet below, she saw children looking up at the sky, dreaming of stars that had once seemed unreachable. She remembered her parents and the lessons they had imparted about courage, compassion, and perseverance. She smiled, knowing that her story would be told in whispers and shouts across galaxies, inspiring generations to come. The galaxy had been reshaped not by armies or empires, but by one human who refused to be limited by expectation or fear. Arya walked forward, embracing the legacy she had created, knowing that humanity's spirit would continue to shine wherever there was darkness. She had become a mercenary, a warrior, and a legend. But above all, she had become a symbol of what humans could achieve when they refused to surrender. She looked at the horizon where the suns rose and set, promising new challenges and adventures, and she welcomed them with the certainty that nothing could break the human will. The galaxy had changed, and so had those who had witnessed it. They would never forget the human who had risen from obscurity to command the stars, and leave a mark that would endure for eternity. The end.